Hey guys, hope you're doing well. Today I'm coming at you with a film review in which I'm going to be discussing the anime film Miss Hokusai. Before we go any further into the video, I just want to give kind of a general disclaimer, which is that because this is an anime film and because this is a film about a historical Japanese figure, this video is going to contain me pronouncing Japanese words. I did study Japanese for many years and I do try really hard when I make these videos to make sure that I'm giving the most correct pronunciation possible. However, I am not fluent in Japanese and I obviously am human, I'm not perfect, and so I may make pronunciation mistakes. Now, in the event that I do make a pronunciation mistake, please don't point it out like a million times in the comments below, and don't leave me phonetic pronunciation guides, because trust me, I already know that I've mispronounced it and it's probably killing editing me right now. I really just wanted to point this out because if I do make a mistake, it's not me being lazy and not doing my research, and it's definitely not me trying to be disrespectful. It's literally just a failure of my mouth. Like I said, the film that I'm going to be talking about today is the 2015 anime feature film Miss Hokusai. Now, Miss Hokusai's screenplay was written by Miho Maru and it was directed by Keiichi Nara. Something I did not know about the film going into it is that it is actually based on or inspired by a manga series of the same title that was released around the 1980s, I believe, that was written by Hinako Sugiura. Both the manga and the film provide kind of loose biographies of Katsushika Hokusai, who was an Edo-era printer and ukiyo-e printmaker. Actually, he's probably the most famous ukiyo-e printmaker of all time, and even if you're not super familiar with Japanese history or culture, you've probably seen the Great Wave of Kanagawa, which is that kind of really traditional Japanese print with, you know, the big wave and Mount Fuji in the background. Although it is a Hokusai biopic of sorts, both the manga and the film again use the lens of his eldest daughter Oe to kind of show the world that Hokusai lives in, the work that he's doing, and the man himself. Although she's a daughter and not a son, Oe does live with her father in his studio. She paints with him and she's kind of his star pupil. She does sketches for him, she works alongside him, and sometimes when he has given up on a piece because it's frustrating him or because something went wrong or because he just doesn't like the client that it's for, she sometimes ends up doing the final pieces that then get attributed to Hokusai. Also living in Hokusai's studio is a young man named Zenjiro Ikeda, who I believe was also a actual historical figure and who was his I guess more formal apprentice. Also included in the film is Oe's mother, who actually lives in a completely different household, and her younger sister Onao. Now, Onao actually lives at the beginning of the film with a bunch of nuns in what I guess can be considered a convent. This is because she was actually born blind, and so taking care of her obviously requires a bit more effort. And as for the plot, the only really overarching plotline or overarching action really is the passage of time through Hokusai and Oe's lives. The whole film is very episodic in that it focuses on kind of just different moments in time. So, you know, different moments where Oe and Onao are kind of developing their relationship as sisters, different moments of inspiration for Hokusai and Oe. Actually, the whole structure of the film very much reminded me of Miyazaki's The Wind Rises. So if you liked the kind of general passage of time but different episodes within that timeline, if that makes sense, if you liked that, I think you might like the structure of this film. To give some kind of general thoughts on the film, first of all, I would say that if you are intrigued at all by historical Japan, I think you're gonna love this. It is set in Edo in 1814. Edo, of course, later became Tokyo, and it just is so vibrant and lush, and you really get a sense of this kind of bustling, crowded, culture-filled city. And it's definitely a bit romanticized, but I think if you like that kind of period setting, you're really gonna find this kind of just a real visual feast. I would also say that if you like magical realism, you are going to enjoy this film because it very much ties in a mysticism with the artistic ability. And speaking of art, the animation in this film is absolutely beautiful. They do an amazing job with the fabrics and really give it all a real sense of texture. All of the characters are very distinct and very easy to recognize, which is interesting in a time where, you know, all the men looked really similar with all the shaved heads and the little top knot things, and yeah, I was really impressed. They also do some really cool shifting in animation style when it comes to the more magical realist moments. And yeah, generally I would say that the animation I think was my favorite thing about this film. To touch on some things that I was not so fond of in this film, first of all, I would say that I don't really think it reveals a whole lot about Hokusai himself, aside from his kind of family situation. If anything, he seemed like any other historical genius, you know, like when you have a grumpy cultural genius who kind of doesn't have time for ordinary people, or who is a little gruff or unapproachable. In that sense, it felt very familiar and like it had been done before. And honestly, when I was in the moment watching the film, I wasn't a huge fan of how episodic it was, which I found surprising because generally that's something I actually really enjoy in films. I think it just felt a bit more choppy than most episodic animes that I have watched before, in that, you know, one moment you can be having this touching sister bonding moment, and then the next you are somewhere in like a brothel, and it was just very disjointed. However, looking back on the film, I started to wonder whether that was actually an intentional way of telling the story in this very choppy, disjointed nature, because it kind of reflects how Oye lived her life. Her father was here, her mother was here, she was constantly jumping between lives, she was jumping between people, because then her sister was also sometimes someplace else. I don't know if that's making any sense, but that was just something I thought of after watching the film and thinking about it for a while. If you've watched any of my anime videos in the past, you may be waiting for me to do kind of a thematic discussion with spoilers, and I'm gonna do a very truncated one right now because I don't really have analysis for these themes. I just want to point them out to you as things that I found interesting. So there may be spoilers from this point forward. You have been warned. The first thing I wanted to point out is kind of the artist's gaze. Now, as I mentioned before, Oye and Hokusai throughout the film have this ability to see beyond what the average person can see. They see the essence of things, and in a way, I guess, that is kind of speaking to the idea that you can't create true art. You can't create art that compels if you can't capture the true essence of something. We're constantly told in the film that Zenjiro is also a good artist, but he's nowhere near their level because he doesn't have this like extra penetrative sight, if that makes sense at all. However, something that Zenjiro does do better than Oye is his erotic art. So think, you know, classy porn that you may see on an Edo era prostitute's wall, that sort of thing. We're constantly told that although his figures aren't as well drawn, although they don't maybe have the correct proportions or they're not as realistic looking, he has this level of sensuality in his art that draws people towards his erotic art over Oye's. Her art, on the other hand, while technically superior, lacks any kind of sensuality or emotion, and as such is inferior in the erotic category to Zenjiro's. We're also told that Zenjiro spends a lot of time in brothels and with prostitutes, and like actually knows some of them by name. So in a sense, it's like he is able to depict the true essence, the true sensual nature of that world because he can see it. Oye, on the other hand, as a young woman, is very unconventional. She, you know, is kind of an apprentice. She lives with men that are not her family, that she is not married to, and yet she kind of draws the line, or society draws the line for her, at engaging in sensual pleasure. And in my mind, because that kind of erotic art is the one thing she can't do perfectly, it's the one thing beyond her artistic insight. It's the one thing that she does not know the essence of, and until she does, she will never be able to portray it realistically. I don't know if I'm reaching or if that was obvious to everybody, but I thought that was just something interesting that I would mention. The last thing I want to talk about, because as you can hear, my voice is kind of going here, is how Oye uses her artistic eye to paint kind of mental pictures for her blind sister. Because she is blind, Onao obviously has a very different way of interacting with the world. She mainly utilizes scent and sound. It's very interesting to think of a blind child being born into a family of artists, and in a way, it makes sense that Hokusai seems to be so unsure of what to do with her. On the one hand, you really want to hate Hokusai for just like never engaging with Onao because, you know, she's just a little girl and she wants her dad, but at the same time, you have to understand that their understandings of the world are so incredibly different. His is so sight-based that he he can't even figure out how to communicate with his daughter in any other way. So those were my thoughts on the anime film Miss Hokusai, and generally speaking, I would say I enjoyed it, though it really was lacking like a wow factor for me. And of course, I would love to know your thoughts on the film if you have watched it. Do you agree with what I said? Disagree? Do you think I missed something entirely? Let me know in a comment down below. I have gotten comments in the past saying that people like these videos, but they aren't sure where to find the films themselves, so I just wanted to mention that if you are in the US right now, Miss Hokusai is available on Netflix, so that's where you can watch this one. Anyways, I'm gonna wrap it up here, so thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you next time. Bye! Yatta! I did it. Seriously, Japanese pronunciation sometimes, it just makes your tongue hurt a little bit.